It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar on visible light communication, abbreviated as VLC. VLC is a subset of optical wireless communication technology. And our speakers for today, Mr. Satish and Mr. Fahim, are highly experienced research scholars from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, working in the same field of study under the guidance of Professor Varun Raghunathan. Mr. Fahim's area of research is related to the physical layer, the hardware, and the laser beam part of VLC. And Mr. Satish will be covering the aspects of applications of VLC for today's session. Fahim, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Samantha. So, good evening, all. Thank you for this opportunity to address you all. So I'll be sharing with you the ongoing projects, what we are doing in our lab, and what the people are doing across the globe. So I'll be sharing the slides. So we are working in the field of visible light communication here in IISc. So our lab name is Advanced Photonics and Microscopy Lab, and we are working under the guidance of Dr. Varun Raghunathan. So most of our work is based on laser-based visible light communication. So I will be giving a glimpse of the hardware system design, how we need to set up the things properly so that we can have the high collection efficiency, or we can increase the throughput, and why we are using the laser diode, why not the LEDs. So some aspects I will be covering here. So this is the agenda, what I will be covering. So first of all, I will be giving a few words about the hardware system design and the components. Then what is the D65 illuminance? It is related to because we are talking about the visible light communication. So for visible light communication, we use the spectrum range in the visible range. So what kind of color we need to use so that we can be able, we will be able to have the illuminance properly to work as a illuminance source, and it can be used for the communication purpose also. So some related to that, there is a parameter D65 illuminant, and the next thing is the maximum permissible exposure limit, because we have the source for the like a laser source. So what kind of source we can use and how much power we can transmit. So that is the another aspect. So two parameters are here, D65 illuminant and the maximum permissible exposure limit for the eye safety. If you will increase the power level beyond that, it can be dangerous for the human eye, or it can damage the retina also. That's why it is very important parameter. So next I will be covering few literature survey, LED-based VLC implementation, MIMO system. MIMO system means multiple input, multiple output. Laser diode implementation in VLC. Or I will be covering the only laser with remote phosphor. Why we are using the remote phosphor, I will give the a few words about that also. So, and the RGB laser diode based visible light white light generation, and narrow angle pencil beam steering. Beam steering is also required if we have a receiver that is mobile. So it move it can move anywhere. So we need to steer the beam according to that. So that is why the beam steering is also required in this field. And the another thing is the multicast transmission, and the what work we are doing in ISC. I will be giving the few words about that also. So first of all, what is the VLC? So here we are using the visible light. So visible spectrum, the wavelength comes to a wavelength range is from 400 nanometer to 750 nanometer. So in that range, any wavelength if we will be using, so that comes under the visible light, right? So that wavelength we need to modulate. If we are having a source of that wavelength, so we need to modulate the light light source, and we transmit the our data. So for that setup, what we require a laser source or the LED source, or in generic way it is a light source. It can be anything like LED, laser, or the superluminance diode. The another thing is the phosphor. One minute. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible.
So if we are using the blue laser diode, so we need a remote phosphor also, right? So we need to convert the blue light into the white, because for illumination we need to use a white light, not the blue light. Blue light is not good for the illumination purpose. So we need to convert that. So for that we need a phosphor. After phosphor, the beam is diverging. So it is doing two work here, like two parameters we are concerning about here. So first of all, first parameter is the beam coherence, because it is especially coherence, because the laser output beam is highly coherent. It is very narrow. If it will fall on the retina, it can damage the eye. That is the one thing. So we need to kill that coherence part of the beam. So if we will use the diffuser, it will diffuse out. It means it is increasing the beam divergence here. So if we will increase the beam divergence, the intensity of the power will be very less on the retina if it will fall on the eye, right? So another thing is it is converting the color of the light also. So blue to white. Then we are using a spherical lens here. The function of this lens is to focus the light on the receiver side. Otherwise, what will happen? The link length will be very small if we will not use, because the light will die out very rapidly, very fast. So we are using this lens to focus the light on the receiver, and this receiver lens here we are using to concentrate the power on a small area detector, because detector speed depends on the area of the detector, right? If you will increase the detector area, the capacitance will increase, then the bandwidth response will slow down, right? So we need to use the, if we want to transmit the data at very high rate, so we need to reduce the diameter of the detector. If you will reduce the diameter of the detector, the power collection efficiency will also reduce. So to increase the power collection efficiency, we are using a lens here, which is concentrating the power on a small area detector here, and we are collecting the power. So how we are doing the communication? This is the very generic setup. And the next, I will be giving a few words about the components, what components people use, what components we are using. So this is the arbitrary waveform generator. This is used to generate the waveform and to drive the laser. So this is the remote phosphors. Just after the blue laser, if we are using the blue laser, so we need to use the phosphor, and these are two kinds of phosphor. So many variants are available. It depends on in what application we need to use, for what application we are using. So this is 2700 Kelvin. This is 4000 Kelvin. If you will be using this, the output light of the diffuser will be some kind of warm white light. I mean, the yellowish color is there. But for 4000 Kelvin, it is bluish in color. That means blue part is more there. But for the illumination purpose, we need a white light, some kind of yellowish. So this is good for the illumination purpose. And the another elements are like we are using the lenses, optical filters. Filters, why we need to use? We use this on the receiver side, because what is happening? The communication, we are modulating the blue laser diode, right? So after modulating this, so information is there in the blue light, and we are converting blue light into the white light. But in white light, some part is there also of the blue component. So we need to reject all other frequency components except blue one. So we need to use a blue filter. It will reject all other components. It will pass only the blue light on the detector. So this is the optical filter, and this is the photo detector. This is the APD photo detector. We can use the avalanche photodiode, or we can use the pin photodiode also. And this is the DSO to analyze the data, received data, and we process the data most of the time offline in MATLAB or in any software. And this is the laser driver circuit. So this is used to drive the laser, because I think you people know about the laser function. We need to bias just like the amplifier. We need to bias the laser at a particular current, so that we can drive the laser. Some threshold value is also there. So we need to bias the laser, and we superimpose our modulating signal on that to drive the laser. So these are the few sources: light emitting diodes, and the laser diodes, and the superluminance diode. So LED is good for the illumination purpose, but the disadvantage is that the power power level is small in terms of the milliwatt only. So it is not good for the illumination. It is good for the illumination, but for the communication purpose, it is not. It cannot go for a long link length. So it cannot communicate over a long distance. So for long distance communication, we need to use the laser diode because it emits the power in terms of the hundreds of milliwatt. But another problem is there. It is not safe for eye and not good for illumination. So we need to decide for which application we are going to design a system and what can be the source that can give that can fulfill our requirement. And this is the superluminance diode, which comes under the which comes somewhere in between the light emitting diodes and the laser diodes. So what is the CIE standard D65 illuminant? So this is like let's say we are having a source, laser source, and we are having a phosphor. After phosphor, we are getting a white light. But some standards are there. What kind of light we want in our room for the illumination? So as we will change the content of the light, so this is the spectrum of the light is changing. So as we are changing the blue component of the light, so this is the spectrum, how it is changing, and this is the Kelvin. It shows like what kind of color is there, like 4000 Kelvin, 2700 Kelvin. So in 2700 Kelvin, the blue component is less. In 4000 Kelvin, the blue component is high. And as it is increasing, this Kelvin, this value is increasing, and this gamma is used to show the color of the light, just to show the color of the light, XY coordinates. So this is the D65 illuminant, and D65 illuminant is it is the illuminant which is measured in the broad light somewhere around the afternoon, so that people are using this as a standard. So when people trying to make a transmitter for the visible light communication system, so the people try to achieve this D65 illuminant, and this is the spectrum of the D65 illuminant, how it looks like. So next thing is the maximum permissible exposure limit. So some standards are there. So this is the graph, and this is the wavelength ranges, and this is the exposure time. So let's say for 1000 seconds, and we use this wavelength range 400 to 700 nanometer. So what can be the maximum power? So it should not go beyond 0 dBm per centimeter square. If it will go beyond that, it can damage the retina. And these are the difference between the, like, if we have a diffused light source means the spatial coherence is very less of the source, and here is the spatial coherence is very high. So if it will image on the retina, it can damage the retina here, because as the area of the beam will reduce, the intensity will increase. And here it is the diffuse light, so it is somewhat safe. So next I will be covering the LED based implementation, so which includes the multiple input, multiple output. Multiple input means we are using more than one source, right? So here we are using 4 sources. And multiple output means we are getting the multiple, we are getting the multiple outputs. So these 4 sources we are using, and we are using a lens here on the receiver. So these 4 sources, we are getting an image on the PCB here. So these 4 sources simultaneously transmitting the data, and here we are getting the data here, and we are having the 4 photo detector here. So in this way we can increase the channel throughput. We can increase the data rate. So the total data rate is 600 Mbps, but if we will use a single source, it was 150 Mbps channel. So this paper is from the J. Mazzara group, somewhere and published in the Wireless Optical Communication Conference. So this is my best system, and the transmitter is LED. And another thing is the people started moving after that towards the laser-based implementation. So this was the first paper based on the laser source, and they used that remote phosphor, yellow phosphor, and how the spectrum will look like, and how the power of the different wavelength will be distributed. This graph shows that, and here it is the what color of light we are getting at theta equals to 0 degree in this direction, at theta equals to 60 degree in this direction. So how the color is spreading and how the color of light, whether the color of light is uniform or not uniform. So this is the gamut they have shown, and they used this yellow phosphor and the blue laser diode. So these are the lux level. What kind of lux level they are getting? They were getting on the receiver side, and this is the data rate 8.79 Gbps over a distance of almost 15 centimeter. So next is they used in this work they used the they used the visible light, but they use the visible light only for communication because they are using a NIR laser, near infrared, and whose wavelength is 785 or 780 nanometer. They are using a 680 nanometer. So it is somewhat reddish in color. We can see here also the red spot we are getting on the receiver. This is the transmitter, this is the receiver, and over a link length of 12 meter, they have communicated, and they checked the communication capacity. To check the communication capacity, they used on-off keying modulation, and the data rate they have achieved 2.5 Gbps. So this is only for communication. They used the blue visible light only for communication, not for the illumination purpose. But it comes under the visible light communication. So another thing is the laser diode based remote phosphor RGB phosphor implementation. So why I have included this one, because I have explained we can use the remote phosphor, yellow remote phosphor. So that is not the first and last option to use to convert the blue light into the white. So we can use other phosphors also, like RGB phosphor. In this paper, they used RGB phosphor, and they convert the blue light into the blue light into the white light, and this is how the color of the light is changing as they are increasing the biasing current of the laser diode. And the link length of this setup was 15 centimeter. So mainly they focused on how we can change the color of the light by using the RGB phosphor. And these are some literature survey on the color converters, what people are using in the visible light communication setup. And another thing is, then now people are moving towards the optical system for the underwater communication. So for underwater communication also, we can use the visible light, the visible sources, because why we are moving towards the visible source to use for the underwater communication. So these are the acoustic waves. Let's say we are using the acoustic wave. It can go up to 10 kilometer or greater than 10 kilometer distance. But the problem is that we cannot go. We cannot achieve the high data rate here because of the acoustic wave, right? So another option is microwave. So microwave attenuates very fast in water. So we cannot use the microwave also. But up to few 5 meter or 10 meter we can use. And the another thing is the blue laser, blue LED. Blue LED can cover the distance greater than the microwave. And if we will be using the blue laser, we can increase the link length there. So that's why people are moving towards the visible light for underwater communication also. And in this paper, they used the link length from 0.6 to 5.4 meter, and the data rate they have achieved 4.8 Gbps using 16 km OFDM. So next one is the what I have covered till now. We can use the blue laser, and we will convert the blue light into the white by using the remote phosphor, yellow phosphor, or we can use the RGB phosphor also, right? So another technique is to generate the white light for illumination purpose and communication. We can use the RGB laser diode, right? 3 colors, because these 3 basic colors are used to make the colors, right? So red, green, and blue. So if we will combine these 3 beams here, and these 3 laser sources they are using, and they are combining these 3 beams in a single beam, right? And after this dichroic mirror, the application of this is it combines the beam. So it is combining the beam here, and we are getting the white light. And they are using a diffuser, frosted glass diffuser here, so that they can distribute the color uniformly. Without any frosted glass, they were using just a convex lens. The color were not uniformly distributed here. So after using the frosted glass, the uniform distributed color we are getting here. and they have checked with this white light. They have checked for the communication capacity also. So for that, they have used the 16 gram OFDM, and the data rate was achieved was 8.8 Gbps over a distance of 0.5 meter. And these are some literatures on the RGB laser diode based white light generation. So next is the, if we are able to generate the white light and we are able to communicate with we are able to communicate and we are able to generate the RGB laser diode based white light generation, then the next thing is how to steer the beam. If we are able to generate and communicate with the white light, so if mobile is not not fixed at a particular position, if it is moving around, so how we will steer the beam according to as per the position of the receiver. So this is the paper. They have used the MEMS mirror, micro electromechanical system. So for that MEMS, they used a MEMS, and the laser beam is coming from there, and they are changing the position of this. They are tilting this MEMS mirror, and they are steering the beam, and they were able to steer the beam from minus 10 degree to plus 10 degree, and they used this. This is the received power, and they took care of the iSafe communication here also. So because if iSafe, if we are not we are not focusing on the iSafety protocol, so it is useless. We cannot use commercially; it will not be available. So they use the green light, and they have generated the white light also, and they checked for the communication performance. How the communication performance is changing is the received power we are changing, and how we will change the received power. We can attenuate the power on transmitter side, and this is the steering beam steering range. So this is the MEMS based beam steering. And next is the multiple single input multiple output based. So they used a reconfigurable multicast transmission using the liquid crystal on silicon. I think this term is new for you people, because and what is this liquid crystal on silicon? This is a SLM, special light modulator. So if we will change the biasing of this device, LCOS, which is called as SLM also, we can change the pattern here. We will be having a single beam here. It will incident on this device, and according to our application, what we are feeding, what we are using for the biasing of this, we will have the output. So this kind of pattern we can have, like 3x3, 2x2, 4x1, any kind of pattern we can have here. So it is a kind of single input, because we are using a single beam, and at the output we are getting multiple beams here. So if we will modulate the laser source here, and we will be using this SLM, so we can have the multicast system, right? So from to broadcast the information. So this is a kind of single input multiple output system. And the next one is the smart kind of link design. So what kind of system for this people are using? So for this system, let's say we have a source and we are moving away from the source. So it means we are increasing the distance. So how the path loss will change? As we study in the wireless communication, received power equals to the transmitted power divided by 4 pi d square, right? This is the distance between the transmitter and receiver. So as we will move away, so the path loss depends on the 1 divided by d square factor. So if we will change somehow, we will use the transmitter lens there, one lens, and we can change the focal length of that transmitter lens. So we can have the control on the divergence. So as the receiver is close to the transmitter, we don't need to reduce the beam divergence, because already it is collecting the power. As we are moving away, according to the 1 divided by d square dependency, path loss will increase. So to reduce that, we need to reduce the beam divergence after the transmitter lens. So if we will be using a liquid lens, we can do that. So this graph is showing how the path loss is changing with the non-smart link. With the smart link, how the path loss is changing. See, this is the distance between the transmitter and receiver in meter, from 1 meter to 4 meter they have checked, and this is the power loss. So with the smart link, the power loss is very less, and with the non-smart link, the power loss is very high. And what is the liquid lens? Liquid lens is a kind of lens, we can tune the focal length of that lens electronically. Okay, we can bias the liquid lens, and if we will change the voltage level of that liquid lens, it will change the radius of curvature of the lens, and we can tune the focal length. So accordingly, we can tune the beam divergence. So from here, I will be presenting the work from our lab, what we are doing in our lab, and what we have done. So for this, in this work, what we have observed. So first of all, I will be explaining the this schematic, this image of the setup. So this is the laser source, the first one, and this is the yellow phosphor, and we are using a transmitter lens here to focus the light on the receiver side. This is the receiver. This unit is receiver, and the first component is the first component is the lens. This is the photo detector, APD photo detector we are using, and this is the eye diagram what we are getting here. So we modulated the laser with on-off modulation, and this is the eye diagram on the receiver side we are getting, right? So what work we have done here? So we designed optical system so that we can optimize our link length at a particular distance from the transmitter. So it is a kind of variable link length optimization. Okay. So this optimization and how we did that. So this is the contour plot. This is the distance between the transmitter and the phosphor, transmitter lens and phosphor. So this is the distance between the phosphor and the transmitter lens, right? And this is the distance between the receiver and the photo detector. So if we will tune these two distances according to the where the receiver position is, we can have the maximum collection efficiency. So this contour plot is showing that, right? So this is in somewhat in depth. So I will be trying to remove some unnecessary part on my talk. So this is the distance, right? So according to the contour plot where we are getting the maximum one, let's say we need to our receiver is at 3000 mm at a distance of 3000 mm from the transmitter. This is at 3000 distance. So what should be the position of this transmitter lens from this phosphor, and what should be the what should be the position of this receiver lens from the APD detector, right? So according to this, we have set it up, and what we were getting, the collection efficiency is very high. So accordingly, we need to change the position of the transmitter lens and the receiver lens from the phosphor and the detector respectively. And how the collection efficiency is changing as a distance, as we are changing the distance between transmitter and receiver. This is the blue curve, and it is I think it is almost same as the it is justifying the divided by d square dependency. But for this, as we are moving away, it is the path loss is reducing, or we can say the collection efficiency is increasing, because we know the position for the 250 centimeter 25 centimeter position and for the 3000 centimeter position. So according to that, we fixed the transmitter and receiver lens position, and we checked how the collection efficiency is changing with the as a function of distance. And this is how the white spot will look like. And these spots are based on the simulation. These are the experimental data, and this is how the color of the light will change as we will move away from the transmitter. And this, and then we checked for the communication capacity. So we were able to achieve up to the 1.5 Gbps over a 300 centimeter. So these two graphs are for this is for the 250 mm optimization. This is for the 3000 mm optimization, and these are the eye diagrams. So in this work, we have done this. And the next, what we did, we tried for the beam steering. So for beam steering, if we will change this receiver lens position from the phosphor, according to this transmitter lens position, beam will steer something like this. This is at center. The transmitter lens is at center. So beam are going straight, right? And it is falling on the receiver lens and then on the detector. As we are moving the transmitter lens, beam is tilting. So by using this method, I will skip this because this is somewhat in depth, the coma aberration and all, why the path loss is reducing. So by using this technique, we were able to steer the beam from minus 7.6 to plus 7.6 degree. In the horizontal direction, we have checked only. And how the VER will change as a function of the steering angle. These plots are for that, and how the color of the light will change. And these are the eye diagrams for that. So we can. This is a very basic concept. If we will change the position of the transmitter lens, it can change the spot position. So we have checked for that, and this is the summary. Like this is how what I have covered till now. So I have covered the LED based MIMO system, laser based implementation, and the RGB laser based white light generation, underwater communication, multicast transmission system, and power smart indoor visible light communication. And these two I have just now I have explained, the path loss optimization and the beam steering. So for the future opportunities, we can think about these problems, like, because in real-time implementation, if we want to have a real-time implementation of visible light communication, so for that we cannot have a bulky system like current and temperature controller device, which I have shown to you. That is very bulky. So we have to think to reduce the size of that. And another aspect and another problem is that, like, I showed some lens to you in our setup also. The diameter of the lens is 50 mm. That is very large. So how to miniaturization can be done? How to miniaturization can be done to reduce these components, form factors, and the how to implement in practical scenario. So these are the some challenges there. So thank you. I would like to have the questions, please.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful insight. It was very informative. And actually, in the chat, we don't have any questions. But now I think I have a question I would like to ask you.
Sure.
So, what were the limitations you faced when you tried to set up the hardware, and like what was the challenge you faced?
Actually, the problem with the VLC is the link length. So most of the people are trying to increase the data rate, or trying to they are trying to work on the transmitter side to increase the modulation bandwidth, right? So we tried on the optical component side to design a system, optical system, so that we can increase the link length.
Okay, sir.
So that was a challenge. So how to increase the link length? So we chose two lenses on the transmitter and receiver side appropriately, so that we can increase that. And another, the main problem is that, like, the non-linearities. Let's say you want to increase the transmitter power to increase the link length, because we have that option also. If we want to increase the link length, we can increase the transmitted power. But another problem with the MPE level, right? We cannot go beyond some level.
Yes.
Before that, another thing comes, like, we cannot have the enough. We have to properly buy the laser diode, and on top of that, we need to implement the modulating signal, just like the on-off key. So we need to have a linear range. Otherwise, non-linearities will come. So that is
Yes,
the problem. So that is the main problem. Still, we were facing that.
Yes, sir. Okay, I understand. And we have another question in the chat box now. This is from Prabha K. She says, please give some basic input about using OLED in VLC.
OLED.
Yes, sir.
Organic light emitting diode, right? So the information like that can be used for a very small distance, because the output power is very small for that. We cannot go beyond the, I think 2 mm or 10 mm, we cannot go beyond that, or 15 mm. So we can use wherever we want to have in those areas where we will be having the application where we need to use the like flexible LEDs, flexible electronics, and if we need to flex the device, because in some application we don't have that hard kind of components and the big components. So in that area we have to use that.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Now I hand over the mic to Satish sir, and he will be talking about the applications of VLC. Satish sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Samanvita. Thank you.
My pleasure, sir.
Thanks, Fahim, for your beginning talk. My talk is related to the application of visible light communication. Just a minute, I'll share my screen. Yeah, I thank my co-worker, Mr. Fahim, for his beginning talk on hardware level implementation of visible light communication and characterization. My work is basically on application level implementation of VLC and utilization of this new technique for the upcoming technologies like 5G and all. So I thank IEEE CMRIT for giving the opportunity to deliver my work. Myself, Satish RN. I'm working as a PhD researcher at ECIIC under Dr. Varun Raghunathan. So here is my outline of the talk. I'll give the introduction to VLC and the perspective towards 5G, where it focuses, and some use cases like how do we demonstrate a unidirectional data transmission in VLC bidirectional, and the necessity of VLC and RF coexistence. Can VLC alone sustain or RF alone sustain? And if they are coexisting, and how to implement a coexistence system, that is handover implementation in VLC. And some more interesting topics like energy harvesting in VLC. And also I'll cover about, if time permits, I'll cover about DCM and some conclusions about the talk. And at the end, I'll have the question and answers. So let me begin with my first slide. So VLC is visible light communication, where we are going to use the light as the source of data transmission. So normally light provides the illumination. So we use the same illuminating light for communication also. So that's the two-sided aspect of visible light communication. So in my slide, you can see three of the pictures where it is pictorially representing what are the typical applications of visible light communication, or the motivation behind this visible light communication is. The picture number one, you can see there is an office space where people are walking around and they are using their own mobile gadgets. And the mobile gadgets necessarily require a network connectivity, seamless network connectivity, when the gadgets or the person using them are under movement. So you can see the directional data transmission requirement in such a scenario. And normally we go for a high data rate communication requirements. So in such scenarios, VLC is a useful technique to introduce as a new upcoming technology. So you can see the another application where there is can be, a figure number 2, where you have a person moving in the corridor, and when he is moving, he may come under the illumination, that is lighting condition, or he may cross the lighting condition where he has to have a another hybrid technology where the RF may come under picture. And in the third diagram, you can see a hospital environment where there are multiple multimedia communication gadgets for operation using telemedicine applications, and those requirements demands high data rate, and the high data rate focused or line of sight communication is possible through visible light communication. So this slide glimpses the very important features of VLC, where it is used and how it is applied in the upcoming technologies. So coming back to the words, visible light communication provides illumination and communication, as you can see, like in future, our lights in the rooms, when you turn on, they are no more the sources of illumination, they become the sources of communication also, a kind of personal or focused communication. So it is predicted that in the near future, wireless users will spend approximately 80% in the indoor scenario and 20% in the outdoor. So indoor scenario means most of the work will be like a office environment where focused data transmission is required. So in such situation, each LED or each light source can act as a data source. So coming to the bandwidth offered by the VLC, bandwidth is like 10,000 times the bandwidth of the RF spectrum. So pictorially you can see the visible light spectrum range from 4 into 10 power 14 to 7.9 into 10 power 14. So, and this is cited from Harald Haas' work, and Harald Haas is treated to be a father of visible light communication. So coming to the application area, I highlighted them in the picture, and there are many more applications that are in future, like in the 4G and 5G technologies. You can see this particular graph where you can see the requirements like bandwidth in the x-axis and latency in the y-axis. We are moving in the increasing requirement of the bandwidth and decreasing requirement in the latency graph or latency axis, where currently we may be residing in 10 milliseconds of latency, where we are moving towards 1 millisecond, and where we are operating at 100 Mbps of peak data rate, we are talking about 1 Gbps. So where this Li-Fi domain are, and I forgot to mention that it is also called as a Li-Fi technology. In other aspect, it is called as light fidelity. So like the Wi-Fi, what we wireless fidelity, we make it as a short form like Wi-Fi. Li-Fi is the other acronym. So you can see that in the Li-Fi domain where dotted red lines are visible. So you come across new application technologies like real-time gaming, autonomous driving, robotic telepresence, virtual reality, tactile internet, augmented reality. So these are most of the upcoming applications. So very end applications which requires high data rate as well as low latency kind of applications. So in the other diagram where 5G technology is also demanding the same thing, like 10 folds of data rate increments and reduction in the latency from 10 millisecond to 1 millisecond, and other aspects are also covered by this Li-Fi technology. So the question may arise, is it a very new technology, or are there any products that are available in the market? Yes, for sure. As Mr. Professor Harald has developed his own company and growing up the products towards the Li-Fi technology. Here are some glimpses of the products that are available from his group, that is Pure Li-Fi group. So you can see an integrated laptop. So normally in a laptop, we come across a Wi-Fi receiver. So if we are thinking about a Li-Fi technology, we require a Li-Fi receiver inbuilt. So either it can be an add-on kind of plug-in, plug and play kind of device, or it can be inbuilt in a laptop. So they built a integrated laptop where they receive the light as well as they transmit the light for a bidirectional application from the Pure Li-Fi products. So you can see a pendant light. So normally pendant lights are for illumination for a focused area in an office environment or a hospital environment. So this pendant area light is not only a source of light, it's also the source of data. So this is for the source side from the ceiling side. So you can see another application like, a product like mobile phone case, where if you adapt this to the particular mobile phone, it not only receives the 5G, 4G or 3G technology data, it also receives the data from the Li-Fi sources. The Li-Fi source can be pure pendant light or the integrated luminaire. So the light falling on it get detected and data transmission takes place in this mobile phone case. It is connected to the mobile. So like that, integrated luminary also works. Like that's the source of light. So I think we are clear with what is the technological development, that is product side development in the area of visible light communication. It's a research that is going on to make as an add-on in the upcoming technology, as well as there is a product level research is also going on. Yeah. So in my previous slide, that is in the application areas, I highlighted a terminology called robotic telepresence. Let me highlight what is that robotic telepresence. So robotic telepresence is a video conferencing robot steerable from a remote location. So it's an autonomous robot. So it acts as a supervisor for any of the application. It's a replacement of a human in any end application. Like it can be a doctor, it can be a manager, it can be a workman or a serviceman in any of the industry. So you can see the a look at the telepresence robots. So it has a multimedia screen, camera, audio toolkit, charging devices, battery, etc. So this is the aspect. And coming to the technological trends, what they are lacking with the telepresence robots, the very standard telepresence robots. So they are having a very good bandwidth of operation, the quality of the data transmission or the camera coverage. So, but the only failuring part in this technology, the telepresence robot, is they're connected. They are built only with the Wi-Fi technology or LTE technology. So now the upcoming technologies, that is VLC or the Li-Fi technology, should get add-on to this, so that when these devices are under movement, so they demand the visible light communication when they come under the light source. When they move out of that, like in a corridor or the corners of the building, so where the RF connectivity is possible. So we require this kind of visible light communication to make it as an add-on platform to get the internet connectivity. So that's where the coexistence of RF and VLC comes into picture. The question like arises, is it like only the VLC in future or RF in future? So the current scenario tells like it's the coexistence of radio frequency and VLC together. So what are the problems associated with the RF? So that is allowing the VLC to make it as an add-on. So RF technology is always associated with a problem called electromagnetic interference, EMI. So that is, if there is a device in a medical environment, that is operation theater, which is using RF technology, if any other nearby device starts operating, so those two devices will interfere because of the overlapping spectra, and that causes the problem of electromagnetic interference. Thereby, the major field like medical field, where the medical devices malfunction due to this problem. And RF solutions are reliable, we agree, but they have the broad coverage and they are used for high mobile users. So they are basically for outdoor environment where they cover the large area and the mobility is continuous. I mean, they provide the large area mobility. And if you come across as I said, VLC is for the upcoming indoor technology where most of the users will be indoor. So that provides a high data rate communication, and directional transmission is used for relatively static users. Like a person sitting in the office, he wants to use the internet on his own. So he can turn on his light, focusing light, the pendant light, and he starts using the illumination as well as the data transmission. So here is a paper talking about the visualization of VLC in a 5G network. So you might have come across the network architecture. So normally we represent the radiating tower or the base station, and these base stations talk to many other household base stations like picocell base stations, and from there they talk to the devices. Like you can see the office environment, some hotspot area, some household environment, etc. So if the internet is connected to the base station via gateway, so that is also connected to the base station in your house. I mean, if you are in a pure wireless environment. Now, in the household environment, so if you are talking about a VLC, so that is called as optical attocell. Normally in the wireless environment, a small cluster of a data network is called as a picocell, and in the VLC terminology, it is called as a attocell, where some gadgets or the devices are getting the VLC connectivity. So you can see there is a RF access point, there is a VLC access point. As I said, there is a need of coexistence. So the user equipment talks to the access points. They basically talks to the access point, and access point talks to the mobile tower or the base station. So this is how the data gets connected in a network. So I'll just go through the simple literature in the field of RF VLC coexistence. Now you may be very clear, like whether it is VLC in future or RF in future. I strongly agree that it's a coexistence or the hybrid kind of network architecture to come up in any of the upcoming technologies. So here is a paper by Harald Haas, where he discusses about dynamic handover scheme, where he uses it's a simulation environment where he uses multiple Li-Fi access points and some one RF access point in the center of the room. It's a 18 meter by 18 meter environment where he simulated the network. And these are the focused light points from ceiling to the ground. Like the transmitter is in the ceiling and the mobile gadgets will be in the floor side. We call them as floor side equipments and the ceiling side equipments. So you can see there is only one RF access point and multiple Li-Fi access points, and multiple users they are moving in the dynamic way. So when a user is moving in the particular area under coverage, he comes across VLC access points, RF access points. The RF access point picture comes into effect where it is not, the region is not covered by the VLC access point. So you can see the white lines in this diagram where that region or the boundary is a region where neither of the VLC access points are covering that region. And there comes the RF access point, which is covering the entire room, but it may be providing you the less data rate, but it gives the continuous connectivity when the devices or the users are moving. So let me come to another work by Ayush et al. So where they talked about coexistence of Wi-Fi and Li-Fi. They talked about two methodologies where it is bidirectional optical communication or unidirectional optical communication. So you can see that there is a router from, RF access point in a particular indoor environment. There is a light source, as we see, a LED or laser-based source. So it is giving the downlink. So normally downlink will be demanding high data rate. So if it is the scenario, can you go for the downlink from the VLC access point to your gadget and uplink through the RF. This is one kind of scenario. Or you can go with another scenario where it can be both uplink and downlink from VLC as well as uplink and downlink from RF. So if the gadget is in the coverage area, you can see the yellow mark. This is the coverage area of a VLC access point, and RF access point is covering the rest of the region as well as this coverage region. But we can write down the protocol such that where I'm getting the VLC access point, I'll go with the communication through VLC access point, both uplink and downlink. If I come, if we cross this communication area from the VLC access point, so there the continuity should go with the wireless Wi-Fi access points. So this is another work by Bavo and group. So the protocol design kind of book. You can go through these papers to elaborate more on this. And this is another work by Rahim. He is also a good researcher in the field of RF VLC coexistence, where he talked about hybrid RF and VLC systems. So he created multiple VLC hotspots and Wi-Fi access points, one access point to cover the uncovered region of the VLC access points. So this is about the literature that I have gone through, some typical literature. And now I'll focus towards the work done by our team. That is, let me start with the data streaming through the VLC. So this is our physical setup where we have the laser source. Just a minute. Hello? Yeah. We have a laser source, the blue laser source passed through the phosphor that converts light into, blue light into white light, passed it through the converging lens, and it is focused towards the receiver. And now the receiver is a photodetector, again converging the light that is scattered in the air, space, and focusing towards the small area photodetector. So this is the physical setup explained by my colleague Fahim. And the rest part that I have included is the RF data source, the DC bias and bias T at the source, bias T at the receiver, etc. So first we characterized our VLC link where we transmitted different RF. We transmitted the signal from different frequency range, and we observed the response of it. It is observed that when we transmit from 0 to 1.2 gigahertz, so this particular setup what we have in our lab, it has responded over a 3 dB range of 800 megahertz. That means this setup is providing us 800 megahertz of bandwidth, which is a huge bandwidth for data transmission. Over this, we tried upon a simple OOK modulation. You can see the eye diagram of it, where it has it's an open eye with very good BER response, and it is providing a BER of 2.5 into 10 power minus 7 over a distance of some 2 meters. We varied the transmitted power, and with the decrement in it, reduced the BER. So We also tried for a video streaming over this VLC link setup. So we have to provide the data from the computer and upconvert this data coming from the computer to the required range of transmission of laser source. In that way, we made a setup using the USRPs. So they are also called as SDRs, software defined radios. So we have two of such USRPs. So thereby we upconvert them. So let me go with the block diagram representation as well as there is a pictorial representation for setup for data transmission. So first we have a video file in our computer, the source computer. We stream it using UDP packet sources. And then, so that is going through the baseband modulation and upconversion in the USRP. And this upconverted RF data is passed through the RF amplifier. So still the data is RF. So now we apply this RF data on the optical domain. That is, it modulates the laser light. So using the bias-T network. So thereby, so there is a transformation of RF light into RF energy into the light energy. So now it is carrying the light energy. So this is passed through the remote phosphor, and the white light is focused towards the receiver. So there is an aspheric lens at the receiver, and there is a photodetector which is focusing receiving the light, the focus light. And the photodetector converts back the light domain into the RF domain, or the electrical domain. And thereby we go for a down conversion in the USRP to the required baseband level, and baseband demodulation takes place, and UDP syncing will be done, and we can stream the video file. In our demonstration, we tried for a very good high quality video file with 60 frames per second of transmission. We did a IQ sampling up to 32 bits per sample with a GMSK modulation and a throughput rate of 12.5 Mbps. We used a frame statistics, loss statistics, where thereby we increased the optical power. As we increase the optical power from bottom to top, I am referring. So at particular bandwidth of transmission, we have very less number of frame loss in our transmission. So you can, in a snapshot wise, you can see the transmitted image and the received image with a very good quality of reception. So in our next work, we tried for a bidirectional. As VLC demands the bidirectional data transmission, we went with the bidirectional data transmission video streaming also. So in this scenario, we go with uplink and downlink. The downlink is from the floor side, the ceiling side to the floor side of our application. There is a LED light or the laser light sitting in the, attached to the ceiling side, and the gadget is in the floor side. As well as in a bidirectional case, the gadget should transmit, which is from the floor side towards the ceiling side. So you can visualize this in the real application way, where we are transmitting a video file from one computer one, transmitted through USRP, and this is our downlink, and this is our uplink. So in the downlink, we require the illumination. So therefore, I'm going with a light source which is illuminating. So the blue light generated and passed through the phosphor, which converts to white light. So here we'll get the white light and illumination and the data. You can see the uplink part where I'm using a IR light, and that is not visible in the indoor environment, and that acts as a uplink without any illumination. So these two entities are also connected to the computer. Now I'll demonstrate with you with the video file about our setup. I'll play this video. Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible. Is there any audio attached to it?
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah. Yeah. It has an audio.
Sir, it's not audible. We can see the video moving, but we can't hear it.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll explain. Actually,
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. This is the work done. So the block diagram I have already explained you. So next we'll show up on the actual test bed what we have in the lab. This is the test bed we have. So you can see two of the laser sources. So this is from the uplink side, that is from left to right, and the downlink is from right to left. And you can see the link side, which is generating the white light. Let me use the pointer. Yeah, here you can see the white light that is coming out. And in the uplink side, you are not seeing any light. So these are our gadgets like USRPs and the computer terminals and DC biasing. And this is overall system what we have. Yeah. So here you can see some video streaming that is going on because the setup is on. Yeah. This is our downlink source, the laser source. You can see actually the blue light is coming. After phosphor, it is becoming the white light. So this is our 2 meter of transmitting distance. This is our USRP. This is our detector, photo detector with a aspheric lens to convert the light falling on it. You can see the small area of detector, and this is the video that is seamlessly streaming over the downlink, a very high quality video that I described. So this is the uplink side where you can see the IR transmitter at 785 nanometer. You are not seeing any light, but it is in invisible range, but it is the light reddish. And there is a second video that is getting streamed. This is the detector for the uplink. So this whole setup constitutes the bidirectional link. So now this is the second video that is playing through uplink. Both the videos are high quality 720 HD quality videos. Here we demonstrate the light being cut off, so which makes the video getting paused. And this is in the absence of the ambient light where the streaming continues. So we thank the 5G test bed for giving our research opportunity in providing the equipments. So next, I'll move on to the next work, that is RF VLC coexistence and the work that is done from our side. So as I described, this is the RF VLC coexistence requirement. This is another scenario where RF VLC coexistence comes into picture. So you are in a office environment. We require VLC downlink, Wi-Fi uplink, and some cabled connection for accessing these access points. So in this diagram, you can see this Michael Raham's paper talk about the average throughput variation with this aggregation or the hybrid technology. So you can see a blue line where if I use a indoor environment where only Wi-Fi access is possible, you can see the static throughput in the entire room, like some 30 Mbps of data rate. But if I go with a hybrid VLC, where RF and VLC are together, and in that way, you will have user equipment and the access point. You will get a very good throughput, and after that it starts decreasing. But if you go with a discussion what I had in my previous link slide, like bidirectional VLC setup, where we get the aggregate data rate which is higher than both the technologies, like only Wi-Fi or hybrid VLC. The aggregate technology will provide you the best throughput if we implement this kind of VLC technology in our indoor application. So this is another work by Michael Rahim. So as I explained the glimpses of this, where he used 2 of the VLC hotspots and 1 RF access points to cover the uncovered region of it. So he measured, he simulated the environment with blue line as only the Wi-Fi, the red dotted line as VLC with 4 access points, and hybrid. This is red is representing only the VLC. The dotted yellow represents the hybrid with 4, hybrid with 8. That means increasing the number of VLC access point in a given indoor environment. You can see that average delay for streaming users. So average delay increases even for the lesser number of users in a Wi-Fi technology. And only VLC provides up to 15 users. And with hybrid 4 number of VLC and 1 RF technology will provide up to 20. And hybrid 8 will provide up to some 30 to 35 users in a given indoor environment. And coming to the throughput increment scenario, Wi-Fi provides a static data throughput, whereas VLC provides some increased data throughput, whereas the overall system will provide you the better throughput. So we worked on this basic environment, experiment on handover implementation or the RF VLC coexistence. So we created such scenario, like we have a RF environment and the VLC environment together. We created some 3 different scenarios, like the dual receiver model. So now the gadget is not only receiving the RF data, it's also receiving the VLC data. So in that scenario, so it has to understand where the user is. So whether it is in VLC coverage region or in the RF coverage region, or is it in movement, like which one to choose. Like the scenario 1, we created dual receiver model, is out of coverage from both the network. That is, no video streaming takes place. In the second environment, scenario, we moved our dual receiver into the RF coverage. So video streaming starts because it's getting the network out of that. And in the third scenario, we moved out of that and VLC network comes into picture. So this kind of 3 scenarios we focused, and to better explain what is handover. Yeah, I'll demonstrate you with a video. Yeah. So I think this is visible. So this is the block diagram. So here we have a laser setup. So this is acting as one of the transmission paths. There is a video streaming taking place. So now this is the moment, like the first, there is no video streaming that is taking place. So now I'm moving into the VLC coverage region. I'm making it as line of sight. So you can see the video streaming takes place. So it is under the VLC coverage point. So since the VLC is focused light or a line of sight coverage, when I move slightly out of that, RF coverage starts, and you can see the continuity of the data transmission, video streaming continues. So this is the kind of basic experimentation we started with, where it is explaining the seamless coverage of VLC and RF together. So what is the way to execute this? So there is a need of understanding both the access points. So there is a call flow in the network. So first we go for a measurement called RSSI, received signal strength indicator. We have to measure from both the access points like VLC and RF, and we have to decide in the receiver point, we have to decide which one is better. So is it like the condition like RSSI of the VLC is greater than RSSI of the RF? Yes, we go with the registration to that network through VLC access point, and the data transmission starts. If it is not, it will register through the RF access point. So we make sure that either one of the technology is available in any of the indoor environment, so as to have a seamless connectivity. And the data transmission starts with the RF access point. So this is the registration part of it. Next, the call flow is towards the handover. So you can see the 4 entities in our representation. Data source or the controller part of it. So VLC access point is there, RF access point is there. The mobile terminal, which is a dual receiver. You can see on each of the entities like VLC, we have a VLC downlink, RF downlink, and RF uplink. And in the mobile terminal, we have VLC downlink, RF downlink, and RF uplink. So it's a dual reception model. So RSSI measurements are going on. It's a downlink that is from VLC access point through, RF access point towards the mobile terminal. So measurement reports will come from the mobile terminal. So these measurement reports are sent to the data source of the controller. Decision is made towards the handoff, and it will select the suitable access point. In this case, it's a VLC access point that is suitable, and a handover request is sent, and validation takes place. Acknowledgements are sent back and forth, and a handover intimation is sent to release the call from the RF access point, and it will validate it and acknowledges. And the data controller will forward the data from RF access point to the VLC access point. Now the data streaming is from VLC access point. This is a scenario of call flow from RF to VLC handover. Similarly, we'll have the call flow from VLC to RF handover, where it has initialized with the VLC access point. You can see the downlink is from VLC access point. And upon measurement, the mobile terminal is in movement from VLC access point towards the RF access point. And there is a requirement of handoff. And at the end, you can see the call flow is showing that the downlink is from RF access point to the mobile terminal. So that's about the RF and VLC coexistence. There is one more interesting idea in the VLC receivers called energy harvesting in the VLC receiver. As we are receiving the illumination as well as data, and there is a process called light to electrical conversion. Thereby, we can go with the energy harvesting in the receivers. Normally, the small receivers or tiny receivers, what we call as sensors, come up with a low energy requirement. They're basically meant for the sensing, and rarely the transmission takes place. So such less energy hungry devices called sensors, for such application we can go for an energy harvesting technology in the VLC receivers. So here I'll discuss about energy harvesting, or these devices are also called as self-powered VLC receivers. And in that case, normally we go with this photodetectors as receivers, what we explained in our previous talks, like Fahim's or mine introductory talk. So we go with a photodetector because they have a fast response time, and they require the external power for operation. And convex lens because their area of aperture, aperture area is very small. So there is one way to use other source of detector called solar panels. So they act as light to RF converter. So they, as well as they convert light, they do harvesting also, and they can be used for communication. The only advantageous part as well as disadvantageous part is the receiving area, which is large. Advantageous in terms of energy harvesting, in terms of implementation, it is bulky. And they have slow response time. That means that limits the data rate and does not require any external power for operation. So here are some papers which are talking about this coming technology to implement, like self-powered and reliable visible light communication, where they used a thin film solar panel as a receiver. They harvested the energy coming from the white light source and used that generated DC to drive the receiver circuit. So this is the technology where the harvesting as well as communication, illumination, all the three aspects are covered in this particular work. So you can see that as the current density increases with the increasing applied voltage, that is falling light, and with different illumination levels, so the harvested energy increases. So in the right hand side, you can see the real image of their work where they're focusing the light from a long distance, and there is a energy conversion taking place, and the receiver circuit is driven from this harvested energy. And in this aspect, we are also moving for a technology of energy harvesting, but we are working with laser as well as photo detector. How to introduce solar panel in this aspect is, this is a typical block diagram. Like I'll use a solar panel for energy harvesting and photo detector for data conversion. So thereby I can go with higher data rates as well as energy harvesting. So we can focus. So this is the optics part of it. So where we use a lens to diverge it for the entire region of solar panel so that all the cells will receive the energy. And there is one more lens which is focusing towards the photodetector. The solar cell, which is receiving the illumination, will convert the light into RF, our electrical signal. So we can convert it to DC, and this will drive the photodetector, which is a fast responding photodetector. So this implementation talks about energy harvesting, illumination, and visible light based communication. So this is another work, dual LED complex modulation. So till now our work was on, the focus was on single source kind of transmission. So we can also go with multiple LED, multiple laser, multiple LED, and multiple photodetector kind of transmission. So in this case, we use dual LEDs. This is the work from Chokkalingam team, and we can replace LED with laser. We can claim it as dual laser complex modulation. So in this work, we are going to have the transmission using two sources, and two detectors will be used. So this is the schematic diagram of this work. So normal QAM mapping will take place, and these will be converted to polar form of the representation. The polar form will separate in two ways, like magnitude and angle. The magnitude part is transmitted using one of the source, that is LED or laser. That means this LED or the laser is modulated using the magnitude part of the incoming data, and another LED or the laser is modulated using the angle part of it. So they transmit independently, and they receive independently. Like the photodetector, there will be two photodetectors, and they're getting the energy from the transmitted light, and they separately converted to electrical signal, and finally appended like magnitude and the angle part, and a QAM signal is reconstructed. So here is a simple example. Like if you consider any sample point in a QAM constellation of a 16 QAM, say 3 plus 3i, you will have the magnitude as 3 into square root of 2 and the phase as 45 degree. So this 3 into square root of 2 is passed through one of the LED or the laser, and the intensity corresponding to the angle pi by 4 is transmitted using another LED. So the corresponding demodulation takes place. So the performance of this dual LED complex modulation is better compared to the normal single LED transmission. It is a technology of MIMO, where we are using 2 transmitters and 2 receivers. So obviously, with higher QAMs of operation, we get the better data rates, and the BER also increases. So that's about my talk. I'll have the conclusion part of it. Like I explained or introduced you what is visible light communication. So for the how to have it as an add-on in the upcoming 5G technology. And I also discussed about our works in the multimedia transmission, like what is unidirectional, what is bidirectional, where their significances are, and what is RF and VLC coexistence, is it needed, or what is the scenario, and how to implement that in a lab, like RF VLC coexistence. And also I discussed about energy harvesting in VLC, and one more topic called DCM. So that's about the talk I had, and the future scope in this environment is how to really implement this in a 5G environment, like open air interface kind of environment, and also develop the prototypes for the handheld devices. So if this 2 challenges are addressed, we come up with VLC in a real scenario. That's all from my side. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can post.
Thank you so much, Satish sir, for that wonderful information. It was so interesting to learn the applications of this new technology. And we have a couple of questions in the chat box now. Yeah. One question from Prabha says, what are the side effects of laser diode on human body? And what are the parameters related to LD light? What parameters related to LD light need to be controlled in order to have good illumination?
Okay. Let me address Prabha's question. What are the side effects of laser diode on human body? So basically, it is also addressed by Fahim. So it is major part of the human body is our retina. If you focus high power into retina, that will surely damage. That is the basic problem associated. So our work or any research work in the visible light communication is discussing about MPA levels, the maximum permissible emission, like the controlled 0 dBm of transmission, where it will not affect any of the human body. So there are effects at high powers, but visible light communication talking about MP level of transmission, it will not affect. So to broadly answer this, it has effects, but in a VLC part, it has no effects. And second part is, what are the parameters related to laser diode need to be controlled to have good illumination? So this was majorly addressed by my colleague Fahim. So basically, it's driving current. Any laser diode means it has a characteristic called LI characteristic, where if you increase the driving current, so the light emitted will be increasing. So thereby, if you increase the driving current through the laser, so obviously the illumination can be increased. Yeah, I think I have addressed.
Thank you, sir. And there's another question from Divyashree in the chat. Is the telepresence telerobot deployed anywhere?
Telepresence robots are existing. Like they are used in the office environments, they are used in the hospital environments. The only drawback are to have an add-on into this feature is they are coming up there with Wi-Fi technology only. Say the telepresence robots are the moving robots with multimedia gadgets. If they are moving and they are getting the network from the Wi-Fi, if they demand, like the application demands high data rate, RF cannot cater. So in that way, if it is going below the any light source where VLC offers a high data rate, and thereby we can gather more data from it. So in that aspect, telepresence robots are existing and they are used, but the only thing to introduce in this is the coexistence of VLC and RF. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And one more question from Vaibhav. Sir, how can we deal with opaque objects and light population when we use VLC without the help of RF?
As I can say, there are technologies like I discussed, only Wi-Fi, only VLC, and VLC and RF together. If you are talking about only VLC, that is without RF, these are the challenges that are to be faced, like opaque object coming in between the transmitter and receiver. Definitely the communication is cut off. So it is in hunger to look for any other technology. The obvious way to get it is the seamless RF connectivity. So I can say, like, without RF, VLC is like not a good way to implement. We need RF as well as VLC to have a good communication coverage. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And I have one question to ask you.
Yeah.
Under the topic RF and VLC coexistence, and specifically in the slide where you talked about call flow for RF to VLC handover, you mentioned something called RSSI measurements. Can you please explain a little about it?
Yeah, it's in any of the wireless technology, the signal in the corresponding area, like if you are a user or a gadget in a particular wireless area, it has to measure what is the signal strength from a access point. Say, for example, it can be a mobile tower or a normal Wi-Fi access point. So received signal, the strength of the received signal is a measuring parameter. If you are, say, for example, if you open your Android phone with the setting and the phone settings, you will see a parameter called received signal. It will normally, if you are in a coverage region, it will show the level like minus 90 dBm. You can also set, visualize this in your own phones, minus 90 dBm, minus 80 dBm, minus 100 dBm. If the signal level is falling below, so that means you are going away from the access point. That indicates the poor connectivity. So RSSI is a continuously monitored or the measured parameter in order to make sure that the device is under connectivity. If the RSSI is falling down, implies so in a real network it needs a handover. Otherwise, it is in the same coverage area and it continues the call connectivity. Am I answered?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. I've understood it. Thank you so much, sir. This was such a wonderful session. Thank you, Fahim sir. Thank you, Satish sir. And now I hand over the mic to my friend Divyashree. She will be doing the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Samanyuta. A big thank you to all the wonderful participants. Thank you for your energy and this wonderful spirit. Please fill in the feedback forms to receive certificates. Now, as we have come to the end of this informative webinar, I am Divishri, here to present vote of thanks. On behalf of IEEE CMRIT, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Satisha and Mr. Pratik. Thank you so much for taking time out for us during these hectic schedules. The webinar shed light on the basics of VLC, hardware and applications in a very interesting manner. It was fascinating to learn about the scope, research advancements in this technology. This webinar has surely opened many career paths to all of us. Thank you. Next, I'd like to thank all the attendees. Thank you for your energetic presence. Thank you to my amazing Exicom team for the smooth conduction of this event. IEEE CMRIT frequently conducts events like these and so much more. So stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I'd like to extend gratitude towards our keynote speakers once again. Again, thank you everyone for being such a delightful audience. Thank you once more.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.